Hello friends, let's see respiratory movements and their mechanism. We have already learned the intercostal muscles and we know that the lungs are situated within the thoracic cavity. The respiratory movements include two phases, inspiration as well as expiration. The inspiration is an active process where it is usually of around 1 second, while expiration it is mostly passive in nature and it is around 3 seconds. When we see the respiratory rates of the normal individual, in case of the adult, it is around 16 to 20 per minute, while in case of the children, it is around 25 to 30 per minute, while in case of the newborn, we can say infant, it is around 30 to 40 per minute. Now let's see the muscles of the inspiration. When we see the muscles of the inspiration, it is mainly via two muscles. One is the diaphragm muscle and the intercostal muscles. Here in this figure, we can see the diaphragm muscle, and this diaphragm muscle, it is situated between the thoracic cavity above and the abdominal cavity below. This diaphragm muscle, it is the main muscle of the inspiration in case of adult as well as the infant. When this diaphragm muscle get contract, it will lead to the decrease in the height of the diaphragm muscle, and this decrease in the height of the diaphragm muscle will increase the volume of the thoracic cavity, and that is responsible for sucking the air inside the lungs. So when the contraction of this diaphragm muscle is there, it will lead to increase in the all the three diameters of the thoracic cavity, and these are the vertical diameters, transverse diameter as well as the antero-posterior diameter. In case of the newborn, the obliquity of the ribs are not present up to the 2 years of the age, and that's why up to the 2 years of age the diaphragm muscle is the only muscle of the inspiration. The second group of the muscle of the inspiration, these are the intercostal muscles, and these intercostal muscles they act on the rib to elevate the rib, and the elevation of the rib will lead to the increase into the antero-posterior diameter as well as the transverse diameter of the thoracic cavity. So when we see the external intercostal muscle, we know the direction of the fibers of the external intercostal muscle, it is downward, forward and medially in the anterolateral side, and the direction of the fibers of the internal intercostal muscles, these are the right angle to the external intercostal muscle, and these are like this. Here we can appreciate that the one-sided external intercostal muscle fiber direction, it is correlate with the contralateral sided internal intercostalis muscle, and that's why the contraction of the one-sided external intercostalis muscle with the interchondral part of the internal intercostalis muscle of the opposite side will lead to the elevation of the rib, and this elevation of the rib will increases the antero-posterior diameter of the thoracic cavity. When we see the electromyographical study, we can see that the contraction of the lower intercostal muscles are more in case of the quiet breathing, while the progressive contraction increases as the deepness of the inspiration increases. Because of the obliquity of the upper six ribs, the contraction of the external intercostalis muscle of one side and the contralateral internal intercostalis muscle will lead to the increase into the antero-posterior diameter of the thorax, and the lower six ribs they are not that much oblique, and that's why the contraction of the same muscles in the lower intercostal space will lead to the increase into the transverse diameter of the thorax. So these intercostal muscles, they are very much important inspiratory muscles in case of the person above the 2 year of age. When we see the other accessory muscles of the inspiration, first we can see the erector spinae muscle. Here the erector spinae muscle when get contract, it will lead to the straightening of the thoracic wall, and this straightening of the thoracic wall, it facilitates the spreading of the lower ribs, and that's why it is responsible for increasing the intrasternal angle, and which will increase the capacity of the thorax, and that's why it is the accessory muscle to the inspiration. The other accessory muscles of the inspiration are the sternocleidomastoid as well as the scalene muscle. The sternocleidomastoid muscle, it is attached with the clavicle, and the scalene muscles, they are going to attach over the first and second ribs. So this sternocleidomastoid as well as the scalene muscles, they are responsible for elevation of the clavicle as well as the upper two ribs during deep inspiration. So in case of the quiet breathing, the sternocleidomastoid as well as the scalene muscles, they have no role, but they have role in the deep inspiration. When we see the other accessory inspiratory muscles, these are the muscles which are attached with the upper limb, and these are the pectoralis major muscle, pectoralis minor muscle, serratus anterior muscle, and all these muscles, they are attached with the upper limb, and that's why these muscles are responsible for fixing the upper limb during the deep inspiration, and thus these muscles are the accessory muscles of the inspiration. One more muscle, that is the quadratus lumborum muscle, and this quadratus lumborum muscle, it is attached with the lower rib, and that's why this quadratus lumborum muscle, it is responsible for fixation of the lower rib, and this action will increases the efficiency of the diaphragm muscle, and thus it is responsible for the inspiration. So quadratus lumborum, it is also the accessory muscle of the inspiration. So all these are the muscles of the inspiration. Now when we see the muscles of the expiration is the passive process mainly, and this expiration takes place by the elastic recoil of the lungs as well as the thoracic cavity. The other muscles, they are responsible for the forced expiration, and these are the flat muscles of the anterior abdominal wall, and these muscles when get contract, it will lead to increase the pressure within the abdomen, and that's why the thoracic cavity volume will decrease and it will lead to the expiration. And the other muscle which is responsible for the forced expiration, that is the latissimus dorsi muscle, and this latissimus dorsi muscle when it get contract, it will lead to the pushing the abdominal cavity from behind, and that will lead to the increase into the intra-abdominal pressure, and which will lead to the expiration. Now you can pause this image and revise the muscles of the respiration what we have learned.